15-minute cities is a very disturbing trend, and it's real. But the other direction is CBDCs and digital money. 130 countries are in the process of implementing different stages of pilot processes for CBDCs around the world. In fact, the EU is implementing the digital euro in October. It's not going to be like, okay, overnight. This is going to be an incremental phase to get you used to using this. Now it's even easier, where they can just switch on and off the digital wallet. Tie this together with the 15-minute cities that we were just talking about. The options of what they can do with that kind of technology are insane and endless. It's not enough to resist. You should study about Bitcoin. Archie. Let's touch on two. So one is climate agenda, and 15-minute cities is a subset of the climate agenda.
Let's go through that.
Okay.
What is the climate agenda?
And then the next one is CBDCs, okay? And we'll get to that. But the climate agenda is basically, they're one of the 17 sustainable goals for the United Nations Agenda 2030 is climate action. And it has to do with all areas of our lives. It impacts everything. And basically, there are very aggressive goals for all countries around the world to mitigate their carbon emissions by 2030. And then later they have further goals for 2050. But for 2030, most of the countries around the world have to reduce their carbon emissions significantly.
Okay, so great.
It starts from there.
Let's say great, right? Why not do that with nuclear rather than lowering energy consumption?
You're asking me because they're fucking idiots? Because nuclear is a great solution. Why not? Because for some reason they decided that carbon is a more convenient way to gain control over corporations, manufacturing, industrial, and also retail. So people, just society at large, because they can tell you what you're eating, where you're flying, what you're doing with your money or with your consumption habits. And that is translated directly to carbon emissions. If you're taking a flight here, you've now consumed 400 CO2 credits. If you are eating meat, you are consuming more carbon credits than if you're eating just vegetables, right? They associate now carbon with everything, but because it's a measure that is very easy for them. It's a metric that is easy for them to measure with. And so they are hung on carbon. There are great people like, for example, Tom Nelson, that has the Tom Nelson podcast that is all about climate and energy. And he's debunking for years now with a lot of experts, professors, scientists that are coming on his show and showing you, he's got a podcast as well, independent media, showing you how this whole climate thing is completely ridiculous, and it's not a control knob on the temperature. Climate is not the cause.
Let's break this out. First of all, so I live in London. I used to work in a high-rise building in Canary Wharf, which is, if most people don't know, it's one of the financial centres in London, and probably 22nd, 23rd floor. And most days I could not see to the city of London, which is like 3 kilometres away, because it was completely, it's all pollution. Now, I want that to stop.
Absolutely.
That's not good for us, right?
But that's where the propaganda comes in, because then they conflate your environmental good causes and good intentions with measuring you and taxing the hell out of you in the name of environmentalism. But deciding that carbon is the cause for all of our problems is a very shallow, superficial way to try and solve the pollution problem or the environmental problems that we are facing. And the world is facing a lot of problems in that respect. But just to narrow it all down to one chemical substance.
But it's not just one chemical, though. Like, so for London, I know what you're saying.
I'm simplifying it for a reason, because it becomes so ridiculous that you think that carbon is the problem. It's the enemy that we need to now fight, like the virus in COVID and like the terrorism in 9/11. It's the same kind of playbook that they're finding this new enemy that you have to fear from or fight or go against. And you think that if you if you manage to win this one battle,
everything's going to be
right. And it's so stupid.
I agree. I agree with that. And I was going to say, like, London's gone through this twice, once with the Industrial Revolution, and it was basically just all soot everywhere, smoke everywhere, because London was just a whole bunch of factories and the air was disgusting. And you see some very old buildings, they're still covered in a black sort of veneer, right?
Yeah.
And so you can still see that, and they cleaned that up, and then they had clean air once more. And I feel like with the adoption of cars, that I guess I don't know if it's peaked, but it's quite high now, and we're seeing not something quite at that scale, but quite different, and a different mix of fumes as well that I think is poisonous. So my question is, like, how do we clean that up without succumbing to the hysteria about other things with respect to...
Well, first of all, we have to educate ourselves about this problem. We have to really learn about climate and energy and start looking for what sources of energies are actually beneficial for us, and what does it require from humanity to adopt to different types of energies, like you mentioned nuclear, for example, because there's this incentives from the government for you to adopt solar and wind that are highly inefficient in many ways for certain things. They cannot stabilize the grid with renewable energy, with green energy, for example. And so their solutions are very superficial and not adequate for what society needs today. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they are putting this problem in the top of their agendas, like if you listen to Ursula von der Leyen saying climate is still in the top of our agendas, we have to solve this thing first, is ridiculous.
Is there a more useless politician in the world than Ursula von der Leyen? Did we talk about this today, or was it the other night? Like, I just want to mention it, because you mentioned cognitive dissonance earlier today, and I just want to point out the utter stupidity of the example we were served this week, especially how you compared sort of democracies with what we might expect in China, or Russia. And she was on stage earlier this week, and it's just pure hypocritical, comedic, and just tragedy.
It's a theater.
Tragic in the fact that people allow this nonsense to go on. She's on stage and a protester starts yelling at her, whatever he was saying, and she has the gall to say to her, "You're lucky you're saying that in a free democratic society, because if you were in Russia, you'd be arrested."
And
at the very point where police grabbed him, arrested him, and carted him off without a hint of irony, and, completely sanctimonious, and the audience was cheering her on.
Unbelievable.
I mean, let's talk about cognitive dissonance for a moment. Like, how is it that we continue to view ourselves in one way while in the very moment, while espousing a particular value, we're transgressing against the value that we're supposedly championing? How do we continue to allow ourselves to have such a self-image?
Cognitive dissonance, that's what it is. It's willfully blind.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. So if I stay on her and her point, where she believes that this is the most important thing, their preferred way of implementing this climate agenda is by creating more and more modern urban environments. And if you look back to COVID, when it just started in 2020, March or April, there was this video that came out from an organization called C40. C40 is an organization of cities, smart cities around the world, and you have dozens, if not hundreds, of cities that are members of this organization. And they made this promotional video clip to show how they are making the best use of the lockdowns during COVID to then install the infrastructure they need to turn their cities into green, sustainable, smart cities during the lockdowns, because they have this vision of 2030 to become sustainable because of the climate agenda, because of the UN, So they have used this. And then you ask yourself, was that a coincidence that the whole world became locked down at the same time, so they can actually do that in most large cities around the world, to turn them into this highly surveilled 24/7 CCTV cameras everywhere. London has more than 1 million CCTV cameras around it. It's insane. And that's all part of the smart city, 15-minute city movement.
What's a 15-minute city?
So 15-minute city means that within 15 minutes, you'll be able to get to all the essential amenities around where you live. So in your neighborhood, you'll get to the laundromat and the cafe and the community center without having to take your private car. You'll just be able to walk or use the bicycle within a 15-minute route. Okay, so that's basically what it means. And in order to create that kind of environment, they have to build up. They have to build a lot of high rises and buildings so that everything is close to you. And there is this movement of creating more and more of those amenities inside the buildings and even connect buildings with each other. And so you are while they are framing this as environmental and green and sustainable and all that stuff, basically they are taking you away and further, like distancing you from nature more and more, because you find yourself closed in this small spectrum of urban reality where everything is concrete and everything is like surveilled and there are artificial lights everywhere. And yeah, there's a bit of green here and there because they have to create, they call it green lungs or green patches around the cities, but they are urban environments. And everything that is outside of the metropolitan or the big cities is slowly starting to be not forbidden, but like harder to sustain. So for example, in Australia, you have new laws that are coming in to forbid you from growing your own food in your backyard. Did you know about that?
No.
Yeah, it exists. You can check me.
And what do? They check your backyard to see if you're growing tomatoes and peppers and strawberries.
I have no idea how they're going to enforce this, but
by drone.
These people are crazy. Why would it be forbidden to grow your own food in your backyard?
This can never be allowed. Like, we have so many people of European descent who still grow their own veggies in their backyard. Like, it could never... Has it passed or is it a proposition?
I don't know. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I can check and let you know, but I know that these things are on the table. And it's
they're going to be a lot of Greeks, Italians, and Turks going to jail.
And that's why there's also this push of doing a lot of hydroponic growing of vegetables and food, which is great. I mean, I'm all for growing your own stuff, but then you have to think about soil and you have to think about grounding and the whole. We live in an environment and a reality that is super like. I forget the word, radiation, full of radiation. EMF is everywhere, and we need to ground. We need to be close to a water source or soil. And when we are being distant from it and being squeezed into cities, then that's really disturbing. Now you see trends, and now you can put, tinfoil hat on and whatever, but I don't care. There are many cases in which natural disasters that are happening, like the fires in LA, like the disaster in Maui, like the war with Iran now in Israel, where people get their houses completely shattered because of these disasters. And then you wait a few weeks and then you see the state or the municipality coming in and either confiscating land or forcing people to give up their private property in order to, like, for your safety, right? To create like a new type of building for you where we force you to give it up in order to come into this high-rise building and to squeeze you into that type of living. In Israel on October 7th, full villages were uprooted because of what has happened, which is completely understandable when you have such a threat. But then a village of like 500 people or 300 families was taken and put into a building in Tel Aviv, in the center of Tel Aviv. Like a whole village is then replaced with one building.
Village in the outer suburbs, suddenly you're in downtown Tel Aviv.
Yes, because now the state is helping you because we're in emergency mode. I understand that. Let's find you a temporary solution. We put you in this building. But then after 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, the people are asking to come back to their village. They're not allowed. Instead, we're giving you this free free housing in the city, in the middle of the city, but I want to live in nature. I was in a village before. No, this is free. This is what you should go for. So there's this trend pushing people more and more into cities, and we're starting to change the way we live. 5G towers everywhere. There's a lot of that radiation that we're not yet clear of how it impacts our health. And the 15-minute cities is a very disturbing trend, and it's real. And you can read more about it on my blog. I write about it from time to time. So that's one vector. The other vector, and that's all related to climate. And there is a lot more where that came from. That's why I recommended Tom Nelson, for example, because he covers this topic in length for those who want to go in that direction. But the other direction is CBDCs and digital money. Now, you and I are both fans of digital money, right? Digital money is not a bad thing inherently. The question is, what type of digital money are we talking about? And when we're talking about state centralized digital money that is programmable, and by using that kind of money, they can actually control what we do and how much freedom we actually have, then that is becoming super dystopian. And 130 countries around the world are in the process of implementing different stages of pilot processes for CBDCs around the world. And on the most part, I'm talking about retail CBDC, meaning your payment app for your daily use. In fact, the EU is implementing CBDCs, which are called the digital euro, in October, 2 months from now. And it's going to be a 2-year phase. It's not going to be like, okay, overnight, everyone has the digital wallet of the digital euro and they have to use just that. This is going to be an incremental phase, which in 2 years, they're going to get you used to using this. And they may even give you some free money and, airdropping, etc., and incentives in order to use it so that your habit can start fitting the new reality in which what you do is highly associated with the Central Bank of Europe, the ECB. Now, the ECB may decide to go through commercial banks in Europe, and each country may develop it a little bit differently. But they are working on a distributed ledger technology pilot between 48 different central banks around Europe. So this thing is very real. And while it's offering convenience and speed and reliability because it's your central bank, it is fiat and it is highly controlled, highly surveilled. So there are two aspects of why this is not good for us. One is control and the other is privacy. With privacy, you can claim, I already don't have privacy today in my financials. There's credit cards, payment apps, everything else I use to transact and to use money today is already not private. Fine. Let's say you don't care about privacy. But what about control? If they can program your money and decide what they do with it, then you are highly controlled. And you can be, if today we already have the problem of being debanked and our bank accounts closing on us as if we were criminals and terrorists. Now it's even easier where they can just switch on and off the digital wallet. Right
at the source. Yeah.
Super easy. It becomes even easier.
And money can expire as well.
Exactly. And there's a geofence feature on it as well. You can only use it in certain kilometer radius around your house. Now, tie this together with the 15-minute cities that we were just talking about. Imagine that you have this new project of a 15-minute city in the neighborhood that you live in, and your municipality has now issued the give me a name, Chelsea token, right? There's now a Chelsea CBDC, and the people of Chelsea can now use that token to buy from grocery shops and pay for services and use that for their daily habits in their community. The municipality then decides to geofence that to Chelsea only. So you have the certain amount of money in your digital wallet that is now conditioned for use only in that geographical location. But you say, hold on, it's my money. I decide where I want to use it. I want to use it elsewhere in another city or overseas. No, I'm sorry, you can't. So, the options of what they can do with that kind of technology are insane and endless, and we shouldn't give them that power. So I definitely call people to resist, but it's not enough to resist. You should study about Bitcoin because there is another way to go. And CBDCs will happen in some countries, not in all countries. Most countries are actually starting to understand that they go too far with the retail implementation, which we just gave as an example. And instead, what they'll do is just replace the wholesale side in the back end. So they'll be, instead of having just normal fiat, they'll have CBDCs in the back end, which is okay, you can say, because it will make them more efficient, etc. But they will still go the CBDC route and spend a lot of your taxes money on the implementation of these kind of systems. And we both know how corporations work and that the governments are very limited with how effective they can be with implementing and launching a new technology. So they will do a private-public partnership here to put that into market. And in order to do that, they are going to spend a lot of your tax money to get that done while you have Bitcoin at the same time that doesn't need all that bullshit. And you can just opt out and decide to move to another system that is already working and has been working for the past 16 years. And in fact, it's working even better every month because you have layer 2 and Lightning Network that allows you to do immediate payments and all that stuff, cross-border payments, all those use cases that they are now experimenting with CBDCs are already implemented in Bitcoin and working. And we've been testing it for you, so it works. So CBDC is happening. The US is taking a slightly different trajectory than CBDCs. They are banning it, but at the same time, they are approving nation-state approved stablecoins. And stablecoins, I see them as a good and bad kind of invention. They are rails for Bitcoin on the one hand, and they are a bridge between the traditional finance system to the cryptographic or digital financial system. And they are probably an inevitability. So if it wasn't for stablecoins, there'll be another invention that will help us move or shift from fiat to Bitcoin at one point.
The outsourced CBDCs.
Yeah. So and they have really a really good product market fit where they have found the right user base in hyperinflated countries in the global south that people really need other money than their failing fiat. And so they adopt stablecoins and it works and it's fine. So it is doing something good in the world. You cannot deny that. But at the same time, it is helping to globalize and further allow the fiat beast and the US debt to continue to grow. So it's a good and bad. It's a yin and yang thing. And there's not much you can do about it, whether you like it or not. You can bitch about it, where a lot of people are doing that. And they are also dooming and glooming themselves with going, stablecoins equals CBDCs. Okay, and now what? Are you want to continue bitching or you want to just learn about Bitcoin instead? Yeah. So, I talk a lot about this topic and I research it and I do my public speaking about that topic because I believe that with the right education about digital money and programmable money and the different alternatives you have, you can actually understand how you can navigate this period and make yourself more immune to the control of the state and develop your own sovereignty around financials.